Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
Hi, Rob Browne here with you on this Monday morning. Holy cow, a lot happened over the weekend. I think a lot of people, look, put things in perspective. Man, I was watching that game with Florida-Tennessee with a bunch of Tennessee fans, including my squaw, Audrey. And the season is not over. Long way to go. What I've seen out of the SEC this year is what happens when you don't have elite quarterback play really anywhere in the league. There's no Bryce Young. There's no Joe Burrow. There's no Cam Newton. Not even close in the SEC this year. You look at the Pac-12, yeah, they've got some great quarterbacks. Michael Penix Jr., Bo Nix, DJ Uiagalelei, DJ from Clemson, who's at Oregon State. I don't know what the deal is with that name. I get a name that it just drives me crazy. DJ Uiagalelei. He's a hell of a quarterback, having a good time out at Oregon State. But I'll tell you what, a lot of football to be played, and players can get better as the season goes along. Got a great show in store for you today. Will Gunter, the game 107.5 in Columbia and all over the Palmetto State. He's got a statewide show now, covers the Gamecocks and all things in South Carolina. He'll be with us here in just a couple of minutes. He's wrapping up his morning show before he joins us in the second segment. Tommy Kane, Citizen Kane, will join us from Charlotte, talking ACC. They're playing some pretty good football. I tell you what, I watched a lot of the highlights and a pretty long version of it of Boston College and Florida State. I tell you what, Florida State was in a fight. Weather was the same for both teams, so not a factor. Okay, it's the same for both teams. I hate when people say, well, if it hadn't rained, it rained on both teams. Put that one to bed. All right, we're going to talk with Tommy Kane, though, about the ACC. Franz Beard will join us in HR-2, GatorBaitMedia.com, his daily thoughts, his pithy thoughts. Doug Dean will jump in for some great banter from down in Birmingham. Wess Moore, ESPN 103.7 The Buzz in Little Rock, will join us as well when he comes on talking about the Razorbacks. Look, we all talked about it. Everybody on this show talked about it. The deal when you play Brigham Young, you are playing a team with a lot of 23 and 24-year-olds. Well, with the virus and all these eligibility extensions, you got a lot of guys on that team probably in their mid to late 20s. Not that Arkansas doesn't, but BYU, that's the norm. And they just out-physicaled Arkansas Saturday. Wess Moore was talking about it last week in the Kent State game. You are pretty much who you are by the second game, third game. That's what you're going to be for the season. Okay? All these people that think that there's going to be this miracle quarterback come out for your team, like Alabama. They don't. Jalen Milroe is the best option they have to win. That's my opinion. If, Tyler Buckner and Ty Simpson they would have started the first game. I don't know why everybody thinks that the backup quarterback is so much better than the starter. I mean, it's like the people that rather than have an aged Angus beef filet for dinner, they want a Swanson's TV dinner. Hungry Man, Salisbury steak. I'm not sure what that is, but I think it's meat. But anyway, they don't. You go up and down the rosters. Go up and down East Division, West Division in the SEC. Find me an elite quarterback. Spencer Rattler is good. He doesn't have much of a supporting cast. He played his ass off Saturday. That first half, 14-3. And we called it on this show. Frank Duffy, me, Kevin Skarbinski on the Saturday morning roundtable. I mean, Wyoming, they were begging you to take the Cowboys. 27.5, or as Frank calls it, 27 and a hook. And the final score, 31-10 Texas. We also said take LSU. Now 28 of the last 32 versus Mississippi State. When you take, by the way, Mississippi State, a quarterback like Will Rogers out of what he does well and try to make him something else, this is what happens. For the second week in a row, I think he broke all kind of stats for least productive game in his career. Last week, we talked about how in game 2, Will Rogers had thrown for the fewest number of yards in any game since he was a middle school football player in Rankin, Mississippi. I'm a big Zach Arnett fan, but I understand wanting to have your own identity. Mike Leach, rest in peace. He's gone. But they won 9 games last year running that offense. And Zach knows how to run a defense. Mississippi State's offense put up a total of 201 yards Saturday. 41-14 or whatever it was. It was awful. Jaden Daniels broke all kinds of records. So, look, lack of elite quarterback play is not helping the SEC. I see Will Gunter down in Columbia, South Carolina. Going to bring him in here right now. Will, been talking about, man, I watched a lot of football like you did over the weekend. I got a bunch of questions already coming in. Hey, folks, send your questions and comments in on YouTube. Mash the subscribe button. It's so easy to do. My dad has done it. It's easy. But get your questions and comments in. I'm getting a lot of them in via text, and I'm trying to type them in, and I've got a bunch of them for Will already. Will, I took South Carolina to cover. I thought that'd be like a 10, 14-point game. They played their butts off. What was the takeaway, good, the bad, and the ugly from Saturday's final 24-14 Georgia over South Carolina?
Yeah, I mean, the obviously a tale of two halves. I actually opened our program this morning at 6 a.m. Eastern time, reading Charles Dickinson's Tale of Two Cities, Tale of Two Halves there for the Gamecocks. The first half, I think the positive is you saw South Carolina actually be physical, and because in the first half they took it to Georgia. I think they caught Georgia off guard with how physical they were, and that's the first time in a while. Even with some great victories last year, that's the first time in a while I've seen South Carolina play that physical of football, both on the offensive line and on the defensive line. South Carolina had a young man emerge on the defensive line on Saturday, TJ Sanders, who was making a lot of plays in the first half and really getting under the skin of Georgia. And then Spencer Rattler was making some good plays, was hitting some passes, and the play calling was fantastic. And then the second half started, and look, Georgia's, they've won back-to-back national championships. They recruit at an unprecedented level. They really do. What they've done, they're loaded with 4 and 5 stars, and they came out and they turned it up a notch. And they were the better team. And give Mike Bobo credit. He made a good. I think in football it's funny when another team makes an adjustment and it works, you don't give that team credit. You blame your coordinator. And what I think happened is that South Carolina thought Georgia would go to more of a running offense and just line up and try and shove it down South Carolina's throat. And give Mike Bobo credit. What he did is went to more of a perimeter-oriented offense and started throwing the ball down the field. They just started throwing quick passes out to the side and putting wide receivers in one-on-one positions with Gamecock defensive backs. And it was a good change. Give Mike Bobo credit. I mean, that's what good teams, that's what good coordinators, that's what they do. And Georgia's elite, and so I don't think it's so easy to blame your own coach and say, well, our coach didn't do this, our coach didn't do that. Certainly there are things that South Carolina could have done differently. There's no doubt about that. But you got the game to 3 points in the fourth quarter, and then South Carolina had some critical mistakes. You had a drop by Trey Knox. You had a sack as good as Spencer Rattler played. There was a third and about 7. And South Carolina was in field goal range, and Georgia's bringing 6 guys, and Rattler needed to either audible or get rid of the ball and keep South Carolina in field goal range for a field goal that could have tied it. Instead, he takes a sack, and South Carolina has to punt. And obviously, to start the second half, there was a bad decision to run a kickoff out of the end zone, but South Carolina thought they had something. They, according to Shane Beamer, he thought that they liked what they were doing versus the kick coverage that Georgia was providing, and so that was a call out of the booth to bring it out, and it went poorly. So, again, Georgia's a really good football team, and we'll get into this a little bit I think you're seeing the good in college football and the bad of the transfer portal. And South Carolina's having to fight through that this year because some of these transfer portal guys that you needed to step up are not. And South Carolina's having to play some freshmen that are very, very talented, but they're freshmen.
Yeah. Well, good question here from Saul Rosenberg in Hilton Head for Will Gunter. Spencer Rattler needs help. What happened in the second half? You pretty much explained that. And I will say something too. My son Wilson may have had the best quote of the weekend with the transfer portal and NIL and so much happening so fast all the time. It's making every college football game weekend like opening weekend of March Madness.
Well, we'll get into this later this week because we got into it just a tad today. Today we were more focused on, South Carolina versus Georgia and the outcome of that game. But you're right. I mean, look, I think, somebody else is going to ask here about what I think about Georgia. I think Georgia's still the number one team in the country. But I think that, in the last few years, we've had an elite team, maybe two elite teams, and then we've had a bunch of good teams. At least through 3 weeks, my takeaway, and some of this is transfer portal related, is you've got, I don't know, I think you've got 10 or 11 teams, at least right now, that I would say are capable of winning the national championship, that are capable of getting to the college football playoff. I think there's more parity this year. Maybe that's a result of the transfer portal. Maybe it's a result of NIL. I don't know just yet. This is something we're going to continue to watch on a week-to-week basis. But, does Florida State look unbeatable? Does Texas look unbeatable? Obviously, Georgia, not unbeatable. Go down the line. And again, there's nobody that I think stands out. And maybe that's more of a part of what the transfer portal has done. But I think there's some relation to South Carolina where they took some transfer offensive linemen and it hasn't worked out. It hasn't worked out. And now you're having to go and play some freshmen. There's a freshman now that's done for the season, Marquis Anderson, who probably would be playing. There is another freshman, Travon Ball, who's probably going to start seeing a lot more snaps. And then Tree Babalade, who got a Pro Football Focus grade of 90 on passing snaps on Saturday, had a below average grade for run blocking, but above average grade for pass blocking, was named 24/7 Sports True Freshman of the Week. So you're having to play some of these freshmen right now, and that's kind of where you are in year 3.
Well, you see that question here from Steve Garvey in Potts Camp, Mississippi. What's the best part of the Carolina team roster-wise? And you hit on that. They're having to play. They got a lot of talented players, but that makes it difficult. I don't care who you're playing, but I noticed in that game, Spencer Rattler, if he can get more help, he gives Carolina a chance against the rest of the teams on their schedule. True or false?
Yeah, yeah. Spencer Rattler, look, Shedeur Sanders is playing great. Caleb Williams is incredible. Spencer Rattler is playing as well as any quarterback in the country. And it's a shame that he threw those 2 interceptions at the end. One of them I don't think was on him. I think the wide receiver didn't run a good route. Could have made more of a play on the ball. Because if you didn't watch the game and you just Saturday night, Sunday morning, or this morning, you looked at the box score and you saw Spencer Rattler's numbers, and you saw 22 of 42 for 256 and a touchdown, 2 interceptions. You went, yeah, that's the Spencer Rattler I'd gotten familiar with last year. That wasn't the case. Spencer Rattler had them in the game, and he threw a pass late in that game on, I think, third down, and it hit a player dead in the chest over the middle. And if you're a Division I, if you're an SEC level tight end, which Trey Knox is from Arkansas, you have to catch it. I mean, there's especially in the NIL era, right? Like you can't get NIL money and drop a pass, but hit him dead in the chest. Would have been a first down. And Spencer Rattler basically had a Georgia defender in his chest, under his chin, as he's trying to throw it. And he's played incredible. And again, I just hate that for him, because we had joked on Friday that for South Carolina to win, Spencer Rattler had to have a monster game. Well, we also said if he has a monster game and they win this game, you start to really talk about him for getting a trip to New York for the Heisman. And at halftime of that game on Saturday, I'm thinking, wow, okay, he's having the game you need him to have. He's doing what you want him to have. And if he goes on to win this game, if South Carolina wins this game, it will be because of Spencer Rattler, because the run game is non-existent. It is non-existent.
Yeah.
And it's not going. I can go ahead. I think maybe they can get something going in that thing, but that thing's putrid. Like Spencer Rattler has to win every game right now unless they figure something out, because that run game is not going to be successful.
Yeah, another one, Irving R. Levine in Aiken, South Carolina. How are the Cox doing in recruiting? Are they addressing their needs? And these are coming in text or YouTube, whatever. Keep sending your comments in, folks. But that, you just said it again. It's kind of like I need to time these better. But recruiting wise, if you can't run the ball in the SEC, it's a game killer. But when you got a quarterback like Spencer Rattler who can run, that gives you some options as well. How good is the tight end room? How rank these wide receivers? Again, you've played Georgia now. I think the worst part is over. The rest of the games, I think on paper, are winnable.
They are. They are. I mean, again, what we're watching evolve with college football now. Obviously, you see Tennessee lose on Saturday night, and Joe Milton can throw it a million miles an hour. You just don't know where it's going to go. Florida is still kind of an enigma. Was that Florida being really good? Was that Tennessee being bad? Was it because they were in the swamp? I mean, that was definitely a different Florida team than we saw out in Salt Lake City on the opening Thursday night. Yeah. So, how good are they? What is Texas A&M? I don't know. I mean, conceivably, the toughest game left on the schedule is the trip to Columbia, Missouri, after they knock off number 15 Kansas State over the weekend with a 61-yard field goal. So You're right. Now, there's got to be changes. I think Steve asked about the best part of Carolina's roster. The good news is it's the wide receivers. Through 3 weeks, I don't know if Juice Wells is going to be back this year. It looks like they'll get a report on him on tomorrow. He'll see a specialist for his foot. And, I mean, at worst case, he's probably definitely out the next 2 weeks, which is not good news. But then you get a bye week, and then you get Florida. So maybe they can get it fixed, and he can be back for the Florida game. But Xavier Legette has stepped up. Omega Blake is a wide receiver who made some nice catches on Saturday and has come around. Luke Doty's a guy that they like. Amarion Browne and Eddie Lewis. The wide receiver, at least that's good news. You got wide receivers that can match up with Spencer Rattler. You got to fix that offensive line right now to be able to block for him and give him time. Because if you give Spencer Rattler time, he's going to shred you. I don't care what defense it is. He's going to shred you. The problem is everybody knows he's throwing it. So everybody's rushing the quarterback, and everybody's getting to the quarterback right now.
All right. From Jimmy Page in Thomasville, Alabama. How good is this Georgia team after watching South Carolina play them Saturday? They've won, obviously, back-to-back national championships, but just on the surface, they ain't got the quarterback they had the previous 2 years, and then whatever they called it in 2020 with how they played Stetson Bennett the 17th.
Well, I think Carson Beck will be fine. He's only played 3 games. It's hard to say that if he is or isn't Stetson Bennett. The big difference right now is experience. How does Carson Beck develop? The one thing I noticed on Saturday, and maybe this will change, maybe they'll find this guy somewhere in that roster. Aside from Brock Bowers, they don't have a guy who scares you. There's not, in years past, maybe Dominic Lovett develops into that guy. Maybe Ra Thomas develops into that guy. But at least at this moment, there wasn't a guy on Saturday that scared me on a given play. They don't have, Kendall Milton was banged up. Maybe he becomes that guy if he gets truly healthy. There was nobody on Saturday that I watched Georgia have that I felt like was a danger to break you on any given play, which is a little bit different than what they've had in the past.
Tommy Kane joins us over in Charlotte. Tommy, we're talking to Will Gunter, 107.5, The Game in Columbia, South Carolina. And, and my son lives in Charlotte, my middle son. And bottom line, he follows Carolina. He follows the ACC. One of the guys he works with took him up to a Carolina Clemson basketball game this past year, went to several ACC games. Y'all are in some great part of the country over there. And I tell you what I love is Tommy's been on with us now, Will, for a couple of years. And we just started bringing you on here back in the spring, before media days and all. But Tommy, we're talking about, he covers South Carolina. He has a statewide show in Myrtle Beach, I think in Florence now as well.
That's correct.
Okay. Yep. Okay. So we're talking about South Carolina, and I love, again, I don't care. I think one thing I noticed about college football, y'all tell me if I'm crazy. Here's the difference.
Well, we know you're crazy. Hold on. We know you're crazy.
Yeah, that's right. I hadn't even had any coffee yet because I'm fasting because I have a physical today at 1:30. But let me say, I was talking about the difference in football fans in where we are. And Alabama fans, I'm texting with some of my Alabama friends. I'm through with football. I'm done. It's just, and then Ole Miss people are over there having the best time in the world in the Grove. They beat Georgia Tech 48-23. And Tommy, you got to have fun, don't you?
I mean, you do that. You know what? That's what college football is all about, guys. We all know that. Like, at the end of the day, we love watching the games. It's just fun. I mean, and you know, the whole thing with Alabama, I mean, they're just so used to winning and dominating everything. They're kind of, I mean, those Alabama fans they're kind of spoiled. Let's be honest. I mean, Clemson fans are the same way. Clemson loses to Duke earlier this year, and everybody's like, "Oh, Clemson, Dabo Swinney, he's done. Get him out, whatever." like, look, in the world, I mean, Duke's kind of a different situation, obviously, because they don't have all the top tier guys or whatever, the transfer portal people coming in and out. But in the world we live in today in college football, guys, like this time next year, it might not be Colorado. It might be Mississippi State. They might have got a coach in there. Something might have come in and just brought in all these players, and all of a sudden they got a top 20 team out of nowhere. Yeah. That's the world we live in now, because you can literally go and just get whoever the heck you want to come play for you and build a franchise and build a dynasty like that. You know, so I mean, the Clemsons, the Alabamas, the dominating players, especially Clemson, because Coach Dabo doesn't take the transfer guys, you know, like they're building it the old school way and scratch. That's not going to probably work as much as it used to. So, I mean, it's a changing of the guards, man. Like, that's just the way it's going to be.
It is. Well, I mean, along the line of what Tommy worked on ACC Network for years, doing ACC Road Trip and Fox Sports in Atlanta, still does lots of work with Pack Production. What he just said, you're talking about Clemson. You're there in South Carolina. Obviously, you're pretty myopic about South Carolina, but you get your Clemson fans that call in. Isn't it crazy? And I think that look, I'm obviously an Auburn grad. In the interest of full disclosure, we're not going to win every game, but that's always the goal. South Carolina fans right now have got to be feeling good about the way. Look, you're not ever happy with a loss, but I think every game on your schedule is winnable. You're right about the battle in Como. That's going to be tough. Eli Drinkowitz, people make fun of him. Oh, he's no good. The Missouri fans are mad at him. Oh, they're 3-0.
Yeah, well, they seem to get off to these good starts, and SEC play trips them up, although they have beaten South Carolina every year, so what do I know? But, you know, the truth of the matter is this. Like, it kind of goes back to what y'all say, man. Football in the South is entirely different. I can't really speak for professional football because I've never really had a professional team that I really root for. But, you know, like if you look, I think it's aren't the Vikings, aren't they now 0-2? I mean, you're talking about a team that people were considering a Super Bowl contender there, maybe not the Super Bowl favorite, but a Super Bowl contender. And now your fan base is losing their mind because what do we do for the entire offseason? We look at the schedule and we figure out how we're going to beat North Carolina, how we're going to beat Georgia, how we're going to be 3-0 and have Mississippi State coming in. I mean, that's what we do down here. Spring football takes precedent, unless you're at Kentucky. Spring football takes precedent over college basketball the majority of the time. And then the Masters can sometimes take precedent over over college basketball that weekend, depending on where you live. But the point is, you know, from the day the college football season wraps up on that Tuesday morning, what's the first thing that's on ESPN? It's not a recap of the game. It's the way too early top 25 for next year. I mean, that's what we do, and we spend all off season. So you spend 8 months hyping yourself up, hyping some player up, hyping some position that's going to be incredible. And then you play that first game, you're like, man, that player is not good. Or that, boy, our offensive line smells bad. I mean, you get the point, and that's football in the South. I don't think, you know, Boston College or Rutgers or some of these northern or Midwestern schools treat it the same way Southern teams do. So yeah, there's a level of being fanatical. If you're an Alabama fan, you've spent all season convincing yourself that the Notre Dame transfer, Tyler Buckner, is going to be the guy, or Jalen Milroe is going to make development, or you know, whatever it is. And now you look at them and you're like, oh, because I'll tell you that story. We were in Myrtle Beach this weekend. I took my kids down and we went to, I wanted Saturday night to go eat, but I wanted it to be like a bar where we had TVs, and we sat down. And I was still thinking about the South Carolina game, and my son points up and was like, wow, Dad, Alabama, South Florida is 10-3. I was like, oh, it's like the first quarter. You know, I'm sure Alabama will pull away. He goes, no, Dad, there's 12 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. And I was, oh, look at that. That's not good. So, we get caught up and very reactionary to what happens on a Saturday to Saturday basis.
Well, and I think too, guys, I think too, you know, as a fan, you go into every season with a clean slate, right? There's no wins or losses. You're so excited about what could be, what potential could be. And the world that we live in with college football now, you take one big loss like Clemson losing to Duke, and you're kind of like, okay, that's it. Like we're not going to get to the promised land like we have on and off of the last couple of years. You know, I mean, you really don't. I mean, technically, I guess you could have a shot at it. But like if you lose one of those early games at the beginning of the season, as far as like your hopes and dreams of making it to the playoffs or wherever you're going to end up going, or I mean, you know, you get squashed pretty quick. And then the whole season, you're like, oh, you know, because there's that one loss. Like Clemson fans right now, I'm sure, are just like besides themselves because the season technically in their eyes is like over. You know what I mean? So yeah.
And again, I was around my wife and brother-in-laws and all Tennessee fans this weekend for a birthday up in Clarksville, Tennessee. And I mean, my wife, Mildred, shame on you. She's like going, the season's over. I'm like, God. But of course, she says Auburn fans are getting mad when the other team gets the ball, you know, or they score. And I mean, but it is the world we live in. But it really hit me when one of my son's friends, you know, one of the members of our hunting club over here, I'm done with Bama. I'm through this season. But I was saying the other day, the quarter, and Tommy, you referenced this right on, and Will, you did too. I always say this: people are looking at the schedule in mid-June and projecting what you're going to do. You're dealing with 18 to 22, 23-year-olds. I mean, man, my kids are 23 to 34 now. I got 4 of them, 2 of each, 2 boys, 2 girls. There ain't anything else. And bottom line, you don't know what you're going to get. You don't know if they're going to answer the phone. You got to text them. I mean, it's a different world. But you know what? You better be able to get through to them, Will.
Well, you know what? I love college football because of the kind of the little stupid stuff, right? And a perfect example is the Dr. Pepper commercials. Like I actually like those.
Yeah.
And the Fanville and the one that they were running this weekend where it shows all the little crew and they're around and there's a pass interference and the wife is smacking the popcorn off and the dad's lighting his and whoever is Bosworth goes, that was just the first play of the game. Maybe we overreacted a little bit. That is one of their best because it is so true.
It's that Tommy, you do production. Tommy's an actor. He does a lot of movies and stuff as well. And Tommy, I think it's the best commercial they've ever done. And I'm trying to get Brian Bosworth on this show.
Right. It was good. It was good. And it's funny because, you know, there's when I see those older guys show up in the commercials, like there's only a certain demographic of us that even know who that guy is. Right. I mean, like there's probably 75% of the kids or people watching the game are probably like, who's that old guy? You know, they don't know who Brian Bosworth is in that world. But when you see those Heisman Trophy commercials too, with the Heisman House, and you have to like go through all those and pick out who the players are, whatever, you know, most of those guys are like, who's the old guy? I'm like, oh, that's, you know, that's Barry Sanders. Mm-hmm. Like, you know, just for most of the generation won't even understand who all those guys are. But we college football older guys, we love it, right? It's great.
Yeah. Well, I think people, I mean, I guess my kids growing up around me, they know who Brian Bosworth is. And what I've heard, don't call him the Boz anymore. He likes to be called Brian. Because I know some people that know him. But you know, when I first saw it, I thought that was Jeff Daniels or Jeff Bridges. And I'm like, that's Bosworth. He's pretty damn funny, but it is right. It's like, guys, it's the first play of the game. I mean, that encapsulates everything, but the interest. Say what you want about Deion Sanders, guys. He's got more eyeballs. Again, I say this every day. There's more interest in Colorado. There hadn't been this much excitement in Boulder, Colorado since they legalized weed. And, you know, I mean, I honestly mean that. You know, I mean, they the only place they're going to have more fun out there is at Red Rocks for a panic show that my kids would go to.
Let me tell you, what Deion Sanders has done out there is absolutely genius. He's worked the system. Yeah, I told my buddy the other day, I was like, it's a lot like when, you know, they talk about Trump paying his taxes or whatever. He's like, I'm just playing within the rules, right? I'm just like, you know, the rules allow, there's ways for me to get around it because I'm working the system and it's all legal. He's working the system. He's working it to a T. Like you can, whether you love him or hate him for who he stands for and how he acts or whatever, he is working the system to a T. He's not cheating. He's doing exactly the way that the rules are written. and he's a marketing genius. He's
Yeah.
they won one game last year to having game day at their set. It must see TV every freaking night, every Saturday. You want to see what's going to happen. And they pull off the big win this weekend with the craziness and overtime and stuff. And it's just must see TV. And he's got the attention of every single transfer guy in the country for next year. He's got the attention of every recruit in the country for next year, because he's built this culture of crazy excitement. I mean, I just think we talked about this a while back, Rob, and I texted you this weekend about it.
Yeah.
When Georgia Tech was looking for their next head coach, and Deion was in the mix. Could you imagine Deion Sanders doing what he's doing right now at Georgia Tech? Yeah. I think it's great for college football, but it's exploiting and showing the loopholes and the bull crap that we have in college football now with the transfer portal.
And we will get to give Tommy credit. Back last year, he was saying about Deion, he said they'd all be dancing the slide rule and the hypotenuse out there on the field, all those engineers at Georgia Tech. It'd be crazy. I agree with you.
Let's see what happens in 2 weeks. The next 2 weeks, you get Oregon and you get Southern Cal. Or how will they play? Travis Hunter's out now for a couple weeks after Saturday night, and that's going to be a blow. I will say this: if he keeps this up, and win or lose, he'll never match what Miami did in the 80s. But Miami became so polarizing, and that's what Colorado's going to be. Miami's going to be so polarizing that you either love them, Colorado's going to be, you either love them and you go get the huge starter jacket to wear around like you had in the 80s, whatever.
The Michelin Man.
Yeah, you will either love them or you're going to tune, as you just said, you're going to tune in to watch them lose and to root against them. And that's the really cool thing. We haven't had a villain in college football in a long time. We haven't had a true villain. Miami was the last real villain. I don't know if you ever labeled Nick Saban and Alabama's villains. They just never reached that level. But that's a great thing for college football, because you're either going to root for that guy and you're going to go buy his merchandise, or you're going to watch them like a lot of people did, stayed up at least East Coast time until 2 a.m. pulling for the other team. And that's a great thing for college football in this day and age.
Hey, can y'all do this? We got to take a break. Let's stay on. This is great stuff, because we had Notre Dame is polarizing. We know about that. You've had the U and Deion with the hood, the hoodie on, the glasses and hat on. You know what? It's making people watch college football, and all these people that predicted the funeral of college football up in New York that try to tell us how to think every day are dead ass wrong. We'll be right back. We got Will Gunter, 107.5 The Game in Columbia, South Carolina. Tommy Kane, Pack Productions over in Charlotte, the Queen City, right after this.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
Unbelievably, every 2 minutes in our communities, a child is either bought or sold for sex. I am R.A. Dickey, board member for the Nashville Anti-Human Trafficking Coalition. Join me and millions of others in our fight against human trafficking and for its victims by helping to educate the most vulnerable among us, our middle and high school students. Go to nhtcoalition.org, become a partner, and help keep our families safe, because none of God's children are for sale.
All right, Rob Browne back here with you. Unbelievable, guys, what is going on in college football. Let me throw some of these questions that are coming in. I'm trying to people are putting them in on YouTube. They come in via text, and I try to type them in. I need to get my typist over here. Mildred, I'll give you a raise, $2 a day. Help me. But, okay, here's one from David Baker. I know Caroline goes to South Carolina. Georgia, even not playing like the past or at their best, is still a solid, deep team. Moral victories aside, Beamer has a ton of positives, the ability to learn and grow from this game and be a threat. Will, you want to take that one? And then I want to get your take on that, Tommy, and got several more questions. And by the way, the ACC ain't dead. I love this.
Yeah, I mean, look, that's the thing. South Carolina did start last year 1-2, lost to Arkansas and Georgia. Obviously, that Georgia game was here in Columbia, and it was a blowout. I think South Carolina made some strides over the weekend in terms of offensive line play. What they have to figure out is the right tackle situation. Give credit to the right tackle, Sidney Fugar. This weekend, he wasn't a turnstile. He didn't let anybody go by him. He was just a speed bump. They just shoved him backwards every time. So they've got to figure out how to be able to continue to shore up that offensive line. And number two, again, you can't ask. There's 9 games left. Amazing. We're through a quarter of the season already, and it kind of sucks. But in the next 9 games,
I know.
Yeah, you've got to. They have to find a run game, and if they can do that, yes, you can take. This is a huge one this weekend against Mississippi State. I mean, the season can go down the drain very quickly with Mississippi State, with Tennessee, bye week, and then Florida. And your next 3, you could conceivably staring down the barrel of a 1-5 start, and then Missouri and Texas A&M follow that, 1-7. But the bottom line is they've got to take some positives from this weekend. One of the things they've got to do though is find a run game.
Tommy?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Will 100%. I mean, there's that's the world you live in. Then when you play in the SEC, you look at your schedule and you just go, oh, we see what kind of wins we could maybe get out of here. And theoretically, you could go through the whole rest, like Will said, their next 4 or 5 games, and they could be looking at a 1-win record for a while there. And then basically, then your season is kind of then over, right? So it's tough when you're playing in that conference. And in South Carolina, I mean, They showed me something this past weekend, though. They showed me they got some talent. They're playing with a lot of heart, and I love Rattler. And I mean, they got some ability to win some games. But I agree with Will. They got to find a run game. They got to balance it out on offense.
All right, another question here. I like this one. And I know y'all, you cover obviously South Carolina, Will and Tommy, you the ACC, but y'all know all the teams. From Jethro Bodine, Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, is the ACC making a comeback? Hell, I think it is. This is the best team Boston College has had. And in that game against Florida State's up 31-10. That was a hell of a comeback. Look, there are no days off, Tommy. This is my take. And I'm glad. I'm tired of people trying to say, the ACC's done. This is how it's going to be. People don't want to have just 8 teams and to hell with everybody else. That's just my take, Tommy. I hate that.
I agree with you. I mean, and it goes back to what I said at the beginning of all this. Yeah, the ACC is back, but like literally this time next year, we could be talking about how, let's say, Syracuse is a top 10 team because they went out in the transfer portal and got 20 guys. I mean, that's the thing about it. Like it's going to just continue to, I think, shift a lot. And, but what I love about the ACC is that the games are all super competitive right now. You don't know week in and week out. Like if you told me Duke would be ranked 18th in the country right now, an undefeated season and had whipped Clemson at the beginning of the year, I would say, come on now, wait a minute. But I mean, Duke has got some players. Duke is like, I think they're 6th in the country in rushing with like 248 yards a game. They got a great quarterback in Riley Leonard. I mean, Duke's got some talent out there. And I think I saw a stat. They had, I want to say maybe 2 or 3 4-star recruits. That's it. And Clemson has 20 and then 4 or 5 5-stars and something like that. I mean,
they had 56 4 and 5s and Duke had 2.
There you go. Okay. So I was off a little bit there, but yeah, I mean, and that just goes to show you that there's the high school recruiting world. I used to deal a lot with that. We used to run a show at Fox Sports called Countdown to Signing Day. And that was way before even the internet existed. And we were producing that show.
I love that.
You'll love this, Rob. One of my first jobs out of college, was working for Turner Sports, and we were running the Sports South, and we were running it was Countdown to Signing Day. A good buddy of mine started that show, and this was before the internet existed. We'd have to get on the phone and call the high schools and wait for the high school coaches to call us during their lunch break. And we would say, all right, so you got this guy, Rob Browne. He's your running back. Can you tell me a little bit about him? And they would say, I would ask them for their 40 speed and everything. And they would go, I mean, I guess it's probably like a 4.7. I don't know. Just put that down. Maybe we were just making up stuff because the internet didn't exist. But anyway, but that just goes to show you like all that those star ratings coming out of college. I mean, yeah, it means a lot, but it doesn't mean the wins or losses at the end of the day when you get to the college ranks. So
yeah, Will, I mean, you're hearing this. You're a little bit younger. Recruiting, it was funny. I remember telling a reporter one time, said, I got a story for you. This kid's going to commit, but the coach said, I just wish somebody from a newspaper would call because I don't know how to get the word out. And then he called down to Daleville, Alabama, to the high school, and he said, tell me about Tony Richardson. He goes, he's right here. Hold on. He goes, hey, I'm going to Auburn. He goes, oh, thank you. Tony went on and played at Auburn, played in the NFL for 17 years as a fullback. I mean, but Tommy's right, Will, and you look at it now, golly, this is what I love is the chaos. My son, I love Wilson's quote. It's making every weekend like March Madness. Now, does anybody in this crowd, because Tommy is an NC State grad, he walked on, Will, and played basketball there at the end of Jim Valvano and with Les Robinson, but that was his dream. You are a basketball savant. Both of y'all are. I can't wait to get y'all on together when college basketball, as we get closer to the season, because I love basketball. And God, both of you. Hey, Tommy, he coached an AAU team with Zion Williamson and John Morant. So
I didn't coach them. I knew them. They were in my town. Okay. They came to Lexington. They were by then I had gotten out of the coaching and into the scouting portion that I was doing for ESPN and then 24/7. But yeah, they would come to Lexington, so I'd go watch them practice when they were a younger age.
It sounded good for the movie.
It did sound good, but I don't want that. Yeah.
Sorry about that.
That's how rumors get started.
Going,
all of a sudden, yeah.
If you can start embellishing, embellish me up some new, Rob, like I was an All-American walker. Give me
Tommy, yeah, he won the national championship. Forget, on that tip in, that was Tommy that was out there in Albuquerque.
I'll still take credit. Now, this is a bit of an embellishment, but I was technically the first person to spot Joel Embiid and put him on the map. Now, he would have gotten himself onto the map, eventually. But I found him in a back gym in Atlanta at I can't remember the name of the school, but in a back gym he was playing, and he had offers from like Central Florida and Southern Mississippi. And I said, I think you're going to be pretty good, son. Hang in there. And obviously, but I wrote an article in 24/7 Sports. He would sooner or later they were going to find him, but I was the first one to ever see him and write about him. So I do credit that one. I take that one.
There you go.
Pretty good stuff, Will. I mean, but and here's another one. Dave Cody, have fun in the Big 12, Colorado. And look, we know they're not going to win every game.
No,
but they're, I remember talking to Tommy Tuberville a lot on this show before he became a senator and got really busy. But he was talking about practices. He was there from 86 to 93 on that staff at Miami. In 86, he and Coach O, they were friends. He said, man, we weren't making any money, literally unpaid GA. And we're going in the cafeteria, asking the students, man, you're not going to eat everything on your plate, are you? I mean, that's how they started. But those are the most interesting people to talk to. And Tommy Tuberville said, we'd be in practice during, you'd look out there. There's, Alonzo Highsmith. Well, he was gone by then, but Benny Blades, Brett Perriman, golly, man, the great players everywhere. And he said, Michael Irvin, you looked around and you were like, oh my God, this is a pro team, but man, they were polarizing. But look at the interest in college football. The 1986 Fiesta Bowl, when Miami got off the plane wearing BDUs, camo fatigues, and they were going to just wipe the field with that Penn State team. And I remember well, late in the fourth quarter, Penn State linebacker Pete Giftopoulos, yes, he was Greek, made that interception. They won 14-10. And and as many times as Miami won the national championship, they played 5 or 6 other times and didn't win it. That's a hell of a run, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it was Miami in those days was just they were the dominant show. I mean, they were there. Everybody was buzzing about it. That's why when they brought, when the ACC started expanding everything, and they started originally sending up the conferences and the two divisions, which now they've gotten rid of. But everybody was loving the fact that they put Florida State in one and Miami in the other, and hopefully that would be like the ACC championship game every year would be Florida State Miami. That was kind of the original thought process when they split up the Atlantic and Coastal divisions, and unfortunately, it never came into fruition because of everything. Miami just kind of fell off the map a little bit. But we were talking earlier. It made me think about it when you were talking about Deion and the buzz around him. And Will mentioned this too. Do you remember the whole Deion world when he was with the Falcons and they were all, and MC Hammer was on the sidelines and all that stuff, and there was that whole relationship? Well, did you see this past weekend all the rap stars and all the guys on the sidelines of Colorado? I mean, he's it's like going back in time, but with a different generation of players. And stuff. His son is now the guy walking around, getting talking with the rappers and everything else. But it is again, I'll go back to it. I don't blame the guy at all. I think he's a genius. And I've had the pleasure of interviewing Deion Sanders one time, and he was the classiest guy. And he was in a full suit and everything, and he was a super nice guy. And I'll just tell you this: I just think he's manipulating or working the system, however you want to say it, to a T, and it is paying off big time. I mean, that school's making more money coming in right now. They got their tickets are going through the roof. Their seasons are sold out. I mean, it's working.
Yeah, and this is interesting, Will. Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying, $18 million they said they made in the last week off the TV and ticket sales and donations coming in. So
he's I've talked to a couple people who have been around him in the NFL. I've never dealt with Deion in any capacity at all, but I've talked to a couple people, and they've said, look, this is, you go back, if you remember the documentary on Ric Flair, the 30 for 30, there was Ric Flair, and then there's whoever
Nature Boy.
But and he got caught up in his persona and then started living that life. But I've talked to people who are familiar with him, and they said, look, there's Deion Sanders, the human being, and then there's Prime Time, the character. And they are two entirely opposite people, because we were talking about it on the radio at the end of last week, and one of the things that got brought up is, for all this, he said bull jive. That's what it was. When he was talking about Jay Norvell, and he said that's some bull jive that he said about me and the glasses and everything. And one of the guys was like, he goes, in football locker rooms, in professional football locker rooms, to find somebody who doesn't use curse words is very, very, very rare. For everything he wants to, that dude didn't curse. He did not curse. And his actual persona, who he is entirely different than the guy who's got the glasses and is talking to junk. And he plays it, and it's great. He doesn't mind playing the role of the heel. He doesn't mind making Colorado a hated, because you know what? He's going to know, I'm going to take my 85 and I'm going to find the best 85, and we're going to beat your 85, and we're going to do it time and time and time again.
Yeah. And I think both of you, look, I know people who've interviewed him and he's this or that, whatever. And I understand that. But we all remember when he threw champagne all over Tim McCarver, a graduate of Christian Brothers High School, my alma mater, in the locker room with the Braves. But, the thing about him, and this is it, y'all both are nailing it. I'm watching Colorado, and, it's a good school. It's a beautiful setting.
Unbelievable.
And he's funny. He's having fun with it. But guys, I watched Colorado the other night. I would not have watched that game.
Right.
I mean, I wouldn't have. It's like, look, I grew up in Memphis, man. Monday night, if your mom would let you stay out past 10, you went to the Mid-South Coliseum for Monday night wrestling. And David Aquadro and Scotty Sneed and Tom Dory and all these guys that are listening right now. David Aquadro is the wrestling historian in Memphis. But my God, you had Dr. Ken Ramey and the interns and Plowboy Frazier. People, it didn't matter. They were the storylines. College football right now, think about this. Y'all both agree. 3 city blocks, 6 big multinational corporations have been trying to tell us since July 1st of 2021 that college football was dead. The respirator was on, the priest was in the room, and they were calling the kinfolks to the bedside. No way. Who owns college football, folks? It's the fans. And here comes the guy in the cowboy hat, Deion. It's not just him. It's a lot of things. But, man, you can't get enough of this stuff. That's just my take. And both of y'all nailed it.
I agree 100%. But, the thing about it, too, is that it's not like it's just it's traveling sideshow of Deion Sanders. Yeah. He got some players.
Yeah, they're 3-0.
His son is a phenomenal quarterback.
Yeah.
That guy can sling it. And his other son, the Shiloh, is a great defensive back. Had the pick 6 the other night, ran it back to the house. I was hoping he was going to start high stepping. I thought when he was running into the end zone, he was going to start high stepping and putting his hand behind his back. But obviously again, but Colorado's got some good players. Travis Hunter, he's a great player. Anybody in the country would want him and did want him. So it's not like it's just you're waiting to see the halftime interviews and the post game press conferences. They're putting on a good product out on the field. Whether they can perform against the Oregons and everybody else they got coming up, we'll find out. But at the end of the day, it's still you're going to want to watch him because you want to watch the Sanders boys play and you want to watch the talent he has on the field. So
where Travis Hunter's from? It's funny. Sewanee, Georgia, Collins Hill High School, where the Falcons train. And Marcus Woodson, I know Marcus, was the defensive backs coach at Florida State. He was the #1 recruit in America coming out of high school. And he was going to Florida State. And remember on signing day, he ended up with Deion at Jackson State. Yeah. And then, guys, we got a few more minutes with y'all, and then we're going to go to hour number 2. We got Franz Beard and Doug Dean coming on. But while I got y'all, first off, thanks both of y'all for taking time out of your Monday to join us. Absolutely great stuff. And here's another one from Alice Cooper in Wilson, Arkansas, guys. Prime is what college football needed. Oh, thank you, Captain Obvious there, Alice Cooper. Keep the singing. Didn't Alice Cooper used to walk around on stage with a big boa constrictor around his neck? He probably still does. Okay, that's what he does. Okay. Yeah, again, Will, we're dating ourselves. Will, do you know who Alice?
I know who Alice Cooper is, but I couldn't. I might guess. I'm not even gonna try. I'd guess a wrong song or something.
Everybody was. It's funny because Prime is. It's just unbelievable the impact he's had on everything else. But we were talking about with Georgia Tech. There's not a team in the country, whether you hate him or don't, or love Deion Sanders, they wouldn't want what Deion Sanders has brought to Colorado right now.
Oh yeah.
It's basically he put CPR into that team and he revived that whole program and it's a destination now. Go play for Deion, go to Colorado. He did it 1 year.
Let's see what there's going to be adversity. When adversity sets in, how does it get handled? That's what you're right. It's been great right now. You thumped the Nebraska team that's awful. You won it. Remember, they were 20-point favorites, 20.5-point favorites on Saturday night, and that thing went to double overtime, triple overtime. And then obviously the TCU game. I'll be interested to see how people. I always talk about this. Start of the year, everybody's 0-0. Right. And everybody's played the same amount of snaps. And then you get into what's happening at Alabama. Alabama's facing adversity. It's really the first time in a long time. How does it get handled? For the first time in a long time, Alabama's got a massive flaw. They don't have a quarterback. You lose this weekend and you're 2-2, which I don't know. When was the last time 08, 07, 06 in there that they were 2-2 maybe? I don't even know if it was that long ago.
07.
Okay. So, the bottom line is that's going to be the next step for Deion. There will be adversity. He's building that program. How does he recruit, or does he continue to do it through the portal? That's going to be there's a lot there with that program. It's going to be fun to watch, though.
It is. It is going to be fun to watch. And I agree with you. There's going to be some – they're going to get blown out here probably eventually soon enough, especially with losing somebody like Hunter. People were talking about that with TCU, and y'all pointed out, it's the transfer portal, but he got good play. People I don't think realize the players he got. That's
I don't know if they're going to get blown out. Can they win a national championship? Or can they make the playoff? I doubt it. But we undersell because it was so many. We undersell the talent he brought in. He went out and took the NFL model of free agency, like you said, and went against the norms. He's got a good football team. This is an 8 or 9 win team.
Yeah, I agree with you. But they're going to have their bumps in the road, and you're going to see everything. But I think with the core of our guys, and maybe I'm wrong here, but Deion is like you said, there's the Deion Sanders and then there's prime time. And you kind of get a little bit of a mix when you see him in his coaching, especially in the press conferences and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, he is a very religious man. He does things right. I think he's a very, in my opinion, I think he probably is a very ethical man, and kind of morals are high when it comes to what to do and not to do and the right way to do it. So I think it'll be interesting to see how he gets his guys to react after a loss here and there, and how they bounce back. So,
well, again, I never dealt with him personally. I never interacted with him, but as y'all mentioned, remember Shiloh Sanders was here at South Carolina under Will Muschamp. Deion was around that facility a good bit, and again, the people that I interact with over there have talked about who he is when that camera's not on, right? Like when he's not in the spotlight. So there's a lot of people here in Columbia over at that university who have dealt with him when Shiloh was here for those 2 years under Will Muschamp, and then transferred out when Muschamp got let go. And you don't find a person down there that speaks poorly of Deion Sanders.
Right.
Yeah. This again, I know there are people that have interviewed him and had issues, whatever, but I've interviewed people before, a lot of people. Y'all are both making great points. I mean, my God, you can John Keats, a great poet, said you can bring any man back from his grave and find something wrong to say about him, carve up his bad side. And then I think that I just think I look for good things with people, and both of y'all just hit on some points. I think, again, adversity, it's coming. I mean, Oregon may put 49 on them in the first half. I don't know, but it's going to be fun either way, because one thing about Deion is he is a competitor, and everybody in that locker room is going to fight. He brought in, 60-something new players? That's the same thing we talked about going into the BYU at Arkansas game this past week. Kept telling people they got a bunch of 24-year-olds, 25-year-olds on that BYU line of scrimmage, and then you got a bunch of 19 and 20-year-olds for Arkansas banging heads with those guys. It's tough. Deion brought in 62 new players this year. That's a seismic. You can only have 85 on scholarship. Yeah. That's seismic, man.
But then think about this, though, guys. It's a great point. But then think about this. Not only did he bring him in, but he's turned him into a team in one season, less than they haven't even played a full season. Yeah. I mean, he played a couple of games in spring practice. So his coaching ability and the motivation he gets to get those kids to focus and to buy in and to focus, and then to understand the plays and learn it. So his coaching staff is got to be top notch underneath. I mean, the guys that he brought in are some pretty big names, guys that have already bought in. But these guys don't have 2 years under the belt running the system, or a year here running the system. They were all 60-some guys that ended from all different systems coming in, and he's gelled them together in one. Now, again, yes, they've won a couple of games that they should have won or whatever. They haven't really really made a big statement. I mean, TCU is arguable, maybe, but at the end of the day, it's going to be interesting to see how the season ends up and what he can pull off. So
look, guys, we run out of time. That Tommy and Will, first go with you, Will. Let people know how they can keep up with you, and you, Tommy. Let's do this again. Great back and forth conversation. Hell, I learned a lot. I was trying to take notes because both of y'all really hit on some salient points. Will?
Yeah. Twitter, WIL Gunter, GUNTER, and of course, we're on. We 100.7, 107.5 the game here in Columbia, 100.3 in Myrtle Beach, and 100.5 in Florence. If you're ever traveling through, you can always go to 1075thegame.com and stream us live, or download the app. You go to App Store and download 1075 the game app and listen 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. Eastern time, Monday through Friday.
Love it, man. Great stuff. And Tommy, let them know how they can keep up with you, and I'll let y'all get on with your day.
Yeah, I appreciate it. You can follow me on Instagram, is where I mainly do most of my stuff, at Tommy Kane-Talent, and then Kane is the last name. And then my production company, Pack 30 Productions. And you can check me out there if you need any video work, production work done and things like that, or hosting work. It's what I do. I'm on my way to Vegas today, boys, for the rest of the week for some work. And probably a few little side bets here and there, but we'll see how that goes. But yeah, appreciate you having me on, Rob. It's always a blast talking to you. Will, good to meet you, man.
Hey, absolutely. ACC, SEC, and it's really going to be fun when I get y'all on more and more as the season goes on, because we're not thinking about basketball yet, but we got football, ACC.
Who's not thinking about basketball? I think about basketball today, Rob.
No, I'm saying it's not that we're not thinking about it. I said we're going to be getting into it, so we'll be bouncing. If the ball bounces, we'll talk about it. Great stuff. We'll take a quick break. Be right back. HR-2 with Franz Beer. Thanks, everybody.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Rob Browne back here. We got Franz Beard joining us here, hour number 2. He's still celebrating, man. And I watched that game in a house full of Vols, and the text and all the, I was, corresponding with people throughout the game. We talked about 3 reasons why Tennessee would win, 3 reasons why Florida would win. We had Franz on last week, and Allie, Peake Wilburn, Buddy Martin, Ben Troop, Mark Ham, Vince Ferrara, Tennessee, Florida people. And then it was kickoff. And then there was that second quarter. Holy shnikes, as Chris Farley said in Tommy Boy. 4 straight touchdowns in the second quarter. That's what it took. And Joe Milton looked confused. He was dazed and confused, to borrow the great line from the Led Zeppelin song that they may have taken from a great blues singer. Hell, I don't know. But Franz, you were in the swamp Saturday night. That was like an old-time roadside revival of Gator spirit and passion. 29-16, the Swamp Monkey continues to stay on top of the Tennessee Volunteers.
It was like it was during the years when Urban Meyer was here, and before that when Spurrier was here. It was the most difficult place to play in college football if you were a visiting team. And we've had noise like that twice, maybe in the last 10 years. One of them was against now you've had it at the end of some ball games, for example, like the heave to cleave, which ironically beat the Vols in 2017, or the Will Greer to Antonio Callaway pass, and which beat the Vols again in 2015. But they bring out the best in Florida fans for some reason. I don't know what it is, but the place was just rocking. I don't know what the decibel level was. My ears were still ringing until yesterday afternoon. It was that loud. Graham Mertz was talking after the game about, his coach's lips are moving, and he sees the lips moving. He's kind of just nodding. Yeah. He says, I can't hear a thing. It was that loud. When Tennessee had the ball, the place was it was an insane asylum. And it was, I understand why Joe Milton couldn't figure things out, because he couldn't hear himself think it was that loud. So, but being that loud only works if your team is working, and this team is working. This is a Florida team that I believe that come November, nobody in the SEC wants to play. They've got 4 games coming up. They're 2-1 right now. They got 4 games coming up that I think that are all very, very winnable for them. Got to go to Kentucky. That's going to be the toughest one, I think. But I think Kentucky's a winnable ball game. Kentucky can't run the football on anybody. They've had a couple breakaway play. They had a 50. You take that 55-yard breakaway play that they had with Ray Davis, and against a bad Akron team, and they only averaged like about 1.5 yards a carry. Florida can stop the run. Florida stopped Tennessee's run cold. Tennessee 30 carries, 100 yards. That's it. And that's where it begins. It begins up front in the SEC. And right now, Florida's offensive line, now that they got Kingsley Egwakun back, made a big difference there at center. And I told you last week, I said with him, if he's back, Florida's offensive line is going to be much, much better. And it was.
And with both teams were supposed to have had their centers back, but without Mays being on there, that hurt Tennessee. And I got Doug Dean's going to come on here and join in with us right now just to have some banter. That Tennessee-Florida game, watching it, and we talked about it a lot. Last week there was a lot of build-up to that game, and Doug, Franz Beard's on here right now. He said it was like the old days, and I said it was like an old roadside revival with Billy Graham for Gator spirit and passion. You couldn't hear in there. And when they played, "We Are the Old Boys of Florida," and then they played Tom Petty, "We Won't Back Down," that's pretty cool, Doug.
Hey, Franz, congratulations on a big win for Gator Nation.
Good to see you, Doug. How's life treating you?
Oh, man, just better than I deserve. Everything's great. A couple of things, and I want to stick mainly to the Florida Gators since you got Franz on. I call him Franz, not Franz. I like the French.
Franz, which one is it? I mean, I'm with
Franz.
Doug. Franz, okay.
It's the Dutch pronunciation of it, and the Dutch pronunciation of it would be Franz.
Okay.
Well, yeah, you foreigners come over here and have to Americanize your pronunciation. But anyway, Franz, if you insist. What was to me fun about that game, and I texted Rob and Duff, was it Friday night or Saturday morning, and I don't take it the wrong way, Franz, but I said, man, I really like Florida. I really want to pick Florida in this one, but Billy Napier has dropped me off out here in Missouri, if you know what I mean, and he's going to have to show me, and damn if he didn't show me. But I felt good about, not that was genius. My God, what was it, the Great Depression that Tennessee last won in Gainesville?
Yeah.
It was. George Bush was the president the last time. Was the last time they won, and this is when you get the Florida fan base behind you. This is a really, really difficult place to play. 2019, Auburn came in here with this was Bo Nix's freshman year, and Florida. The place was unbelievably loud then. It was in 2021. Alabama came in here ranked number 2, and Florida should have won that ball game back there that year. And I look at how things have unfurled. What would have happened if Florida had beaten Alabama that day? Dan Mullen might still be the coach, but instead, lost that ball game, and I think lost the fan base for a long time. And you're right, Doug. The fan base the Florida fan base has been kind of in a show me mood all of last year. And I really think it took Florida coming out there and playing a quality team, beating a quality team. You got to remember, this is the first Power 5 team that Florida has beaten since they beat Missouri last year here in the Swamp. And they've had some losses. They've had some close losses. I think people came here thinking, well, if we just stay close to Tennessee. Well, they not only stayed close to Tennessee, they held the ball for 37 minutes and 34 seconds, and the Vols absolutely could not get anything going. They didn't have the time. These new clock rules, I got to tell you what, guys, these new clock rules favor a team like Florida that can line up there, run their offense, and they're not looking to throw 28 downfield passes. They're just going to throw the ball boom, 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 boom. 8-9 yard plays make the chains move, make the team move down the field. Did you see that first drive that Florida had? 7 minutes, 34 seconds. Now, it wound up with a blocked field goal. And by the way, Florida changed field goal kickers mid-game there and got Trey Smack, who actually can get the ball up in the air. He's going to be the kicker the rest of the year. But 7 minutes and 34 seconds. Tennessee sitting there waiting to get on the field offensively, and the clock ticks and ticks and ticks. And all of a sudden, half the quarter is gone. And this is going to – it was 21 minutes of possession at the half. This is going to be a team that if they can execute a game plan like that and control the clock, they're going to be really hard to beat.
Yeah, and, I was commenting on that incredibly long run of the Gators always beating the Vols in Gainesville. The Gators, I'm sure, would be the first to say we'd like to win even more when we're in Knoxville. But now, under the circumstances of Coach Napier, in a way there was more pressure on Billy. In that, man, do you want to be when you're kind of trying to win the fan base over and win, and you do it on the field, not through talking. Mm-hmm. Talking matters a little bit, in recruiting and PR, but winning and losing is what people most pay attention to. And pardon me, I had a call coming in, Rob. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah.
And so the more pressure on Billy Napier, if he, under the circumstances, is the guy that breaks that streak in Gainesville, that's tough. And now you need to start Gator Nation should think big now, Franz. The great Gene Stallings like to say, well, now, if you don't think Charlotte this Saturday is a big game, just go out there and lose it.
Yeah.
But you got a chance to get to, I believe it's 6-1 going into your October 21 open date, and who you play after that open date.
The Poodles. But yeah. I think it's a real shot at 6-1, and I think if Florida is 6-1 at that point, there are going to be some people who are going to have to dine on their words. Florida, one columnist had Graham Mertz as the number 14 quarterback, even in the league, even a couple of weeks ago. Well, let's just say he's better than 14. I'll just leave it at that. This is a guy, and one of the things we've talked about here on this show is he was brought here not to be the stud playmaker who's all of a sudden lighting it up and throwing for 300 yards a game. He was brought here to control the offense, to run the offense, to do what Billy Napier wants to do. And you look at these last two ball games. I mean, my gosh, talking about efficiency. He is hitting 75.3% of his passes this year. And most of them are like 8 and 9 yard darts. Boom, 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 boom. But in this offense, the way they run the ball, you're going to get single coverage pretty much across the way. Tennessee tried to play Florida with a one high to keep the safety in there. And in the second half, when Florida was just saying, we're not going to pass the ball, Florida only threw 4 passes in the second half. The whole game was all about keeping the clock moving and keeping the balls off the field. It's called playing defense with your offense.
When you look at, I want to hear Rob's comments on this question too, looking at the bigger picture of the SEC. It looks can be deceiving sometimes, but I don't think we're misreading the fact that compared to the last 2 years with an extraordinarily dominant Georgia team, and right on their heels, if we're fair, Alabama, with LSU showing a real pulse, winning the West last year, Tennessee, tearing the goalposts down in that big game in Knoxville. But this year, I just don't see that sort of dominant team that strikes mortal fear in your heart. If there's going to be one, and things can change. I mean, a lot of people had written off LSU, and they against a probably not the best Mississippi State team. LSU looked pretty dominant, but Georgia was anything but dominant in that game. Not to take anything away from South Carolina, but And yet Georgia could find themselves the beneficiary of a second straight year of some good fortune, in that the team that recruits top 2 or 3 every single year, Alabama, is struggling, not just at quarterback. They appeared Saturday to have run 2 more quarterbacks mentally. So if you like parity, it looks like we're getting some of it this year.
I think right now, I think the best 3 teams in college football do not include anyone from the SEC. I think they're Michigan, I think it's Washington, I think it's Notre Dame. I think those are the 3 best teams I have seen all year.
Don't sleep on Penn State either.
Penn State's pretty good, but I think Penn State's going to get bushwhacked. They have that same problem that a lot of teams have. They got to play Ohio State and Michigan every year. Yeah. And I don't think they survive. I think Michigan, all things considered, and they get Harbaugh back this week. And I think Michigan, all things considered, is the best team in the country. I think Washington out in the Pac-12 is the best team out there. It's Washington, I think, is better than Oregon, because I think Washington has a better overall defense and can get after the passer better. Michael Penix, I'll tell you what, how Dan Mullen missed him. He's down there in Tampa, and how Dan Mullen missed him, I don't know. But wow, what an arm he has. And Notre Dame, Sam Hartman, my gosh, put a good old Baptist boy up there with the Catholics, and look what happens. They just take it off.
That's great. Yeah, he's playing at a high level, that's for sure. Rob?
Well, again, you got to love this question, folks. Coming in here from Mildred in Columbiana. She's not. They asked her one time where she's from. She said Columbiana. I said, where? Columbiana. I guess that's Columbiana. From Mildred in Columbiana. Is Saban still coaching the Tide? I think that's reflective, guys, of a lot of the fans that out here are what's going on. But Doug, you're right. And Tim Tebow said it. It's too early to make that change at quarterback. If Alabama had, if Tyler Buckner and Ty Simpson were better quarterbacks, they'd have been starting against Middle Tennessee and Texas. The only chance Alabama has to win, the best chance, is with Jalen Milroe. That's your guy. But I want to say this, go ahead, Franz.
I'll disagree. I think the best quarterback they got is that freshman.
Dylan Lonergan.
Play him. Dylan Lonergan is the guy. Trust me.
They keep saying that when we talk to Rodney Orr and Gary Harris, who do Tighter Insider TV Tuesday nights at 6:30 on YouTube. That's what they keep saying. He may be the best, but what are the odds, Doug, of Nick Saban playing him? I know Mildred is just beside herself over this. Pow.
Yeah. Well, the last thing a good Bama fan would want is some Barner. Was that what they call us, Rob? Bugs and Barner?
Yes, sir. Barners.
I'm bugging it this year. If we keep winning and playing better than, the book the experts said in August. I'm talking about August. But Alabama, I was thinking, as great as Saban is, and he's definitely that, and he's done it more than one place. That's why LSU fans have no love for him lately. But this could be his year, Rob, whether they win it all or not, which looks on life support at the moment. But remember Coach Dye, the year where the players were wrestling with them angels all year.
Yeah.
There you can just see it from the outside looking in that there's some inner doubt and confusion and loss of confidence, that not their whole team by any means. They've got some studs, but some of their players that are capable of performing and executing at a much higher level, that just, it reminds me of what, to a degree, you saw with Will Rogers at State. Mike Leach leaves this good earth, rest his soul, and they, for whatever reason, they didn't have somebody they liked to continue to do the air raid like they were, and they've gone to pro style. And Will Rogers just looks like he is so confused by how does this all work? It doesn't feel comfortable, and that's what you're seeing at Alabama. But it sets the stage also where chaos is opportunity, like Asante said, Eugene Asante at Auburn. The great linebacker that Saban could work with these kids, especially psychologically, the space between the ears. And if he can find a way to get them to just play, be athletes and go play and see ball, run the ball, and tackle, and the same on offense, then this could be his year where he turns them around when it really matters most. Because frankly, all they've probably got to do to win the West, all they've got to do, they've got to beat LSU. And then after that, well, probably this Saturday shapes up to be a pretty damn big game with Ole Miss.
Yeah.
But they got it. If they can get those and beat LSU, then that, to me, that primarily leaves, maybe the Aggies can be a problem with Bobby Petrino there, but it really leaves that trip to Jordan-Hare Stadium. And then, so I'm very slow to write off this Alabama team, even though if you only went by appearances, you could do that.
Well, I can tell you one thing, Alabama, what Alabama needs worse than a quarterback is an offensive coordinator. Nick, I think, right now we're only 3 games into the season, but I can tell you right now, Nick Saban made a real blunder when he hired Kevin Steele as his defensive coordinator and when he hired Tommy Rees as his offensive coordinator. But Kevin Steele has redemptive qualities about him because he does know Saban and he does know Saban's system. Tommy Rees, I think, you want to talk about a lost ball on the tall grass. He is there. Wow. I have not seen anything, and I've watched all their ball games, either live or on replay, and the inconsistency of his play calling is just mind-boggling. But, Doug, I went back and looked at what he did at Notre Dame, and you look at how the Notre Dame offense is thriving this year. I mean, that's as good an offense as there is in the country right now. Sam Hartman, I don't think he has thrown an interception. He's thrown like 13 or 14 touchdown passes, and that running game, it just powers people. That's the best offense in the country. And why is it? They got rid of Tommy Rees and they brought in somebody that knows how to call a ball game.
You're right. I mean, I think Tyler Buchner would not have beaten Sam Hartman out for the job had he stayed at Notre Dame. And what happens is, and I'm not saying Nick Saban's retiring this year, but I had this conversation with a huge Alabama fan 3 years ago, and he said, Nick Saban is the best, the GOAT. I mean, we all will acknowledge that. But what every coach has to be careful of is they stay on and on and on. They outlive their usefulness. I mean, Bobby Bowden at Florida State got to the point where when an assistant coach like a Chuck Amato or a Mark Richt or Ronnie Cottrell left, it was really hard to replace him because a guy would say, and when you have that conversation with your wife and she's like, hey, do we want to pull the kids out of school, move across the country when he may be retiring in a year or two? I mean, I don't know, but it gets harder. And then if you start taking the word of someone that knows someone, you got to be careful with that. I'm not saying he's not the best, but you got to be careful. Tommy Rees, I mean, I love the Kevin Steele hire. But you're right about Tommy Rees and Tyler Buchner. Those kids, Doug, you're right. Psychologically, they're going, why am I here?
Well, and what I'm seeing, and this sort of indicts what may prove to be a hasty decision to yank Milroe after the frustrating. I know that game meant a lot to Saban. It was on such a big stage, and Milroe didn't play well at all. He was not seeing the field, but he for all of those liabilities, if you don't really have a proven QB that can run the whole offense and keep defenses honest and check out of bad plays and make the throws, then I think it looks like Alabama's best chance is to go really run heavy, including quarterback runs, and just see if they can physically overpower most everybody in their face. But that would mean playing Milroe after sitting him after one game.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, was that a tryout game? I think Alabama felt that, okay, we can win this game, with one of the three of us at quarterback. But and quite frankly, you guys would probably do a pretty good job. I'm a little past my prime, but I think that was a tryout game. I think Milroe they knew they could win with Milroe in there, but they wanted to see these other guys, and so they played him. And I think Milroe is going to be the quarterback moving forward. But the best quarterback is Dylan Lonergan, and they need him in the worst way. And if Ole Miss comes in there and beats them, and I think I may be in the minority here, guys, but I think Ole Miss has one heck of a shot at going into Tuscaloosa and coming out of there with a win. Lane Kiffin is the best play caller in college football, period. And second place isn't even close. And you put him in there with a quarterback who now is starting to really mature. And I think Jackson Dart has come farther than any quarterback I've seen, in a year. He is really, really lighting it up. They've got running backs, they got wide receivers, they got an offensive line that just moves people out of the place. And they only need to get and this plays right into their hands because they're playing an Alabama team that struggles offensively. My gosh, if you got a defense that is like this every time they go out on the field, you love it. You love it when you face a team that struggles offensively. They're going to make the Ole Miss defense look better than it really is. And don't you know, Pete Golding is salivating at the chance to stick it to his old boss because, that was one of these, well, he hasn't been fired. He chose by his own volition to go from the top place in the country to Ole Miss. Right. Donkeys fly too, guys.
Yeah. In the SEC, I would guess Ole Miss at Alabama, 2:30 game Central Daylight Time is the marquee matchup. Some of us are intrigued and can't wait to find out with SEC play beginning at College Station for Auburn. Are we any better? And I'm sure Aggie Nation is thinking the same way. Auburn will at least give them a legitimate test of, are we getting well since the Miami game? But no question about it, all eyes will be on Lane Kiffin, and he has no love lost for Alabama for reasons that are well documented. If I were aware, I have a feeling the public will be all over Ole Miss, and that's why, take a flyer on Alabama to, as they do a lot, show up and play hard and physical and surprise the experts. So I don't have a feel for that Alabama Ole Miss game.
I'm beginning to think that Ole Miss, they won 48-23 over Georgia Tech. And by the way, great column David Housel put out back, in the day, the thought of Georgia Tech ever, Bobby Dodd, they were so elitist ever going to a place like, as he said, Oxford, Mississippi, Starkville, Mississippi. Hell, as my dad said, they made Auburn go up there 14 years in a row to Atlanta. Ole Miss, this team is having fun, guys. I'm gonna say it right now. I like Ole Miss to cover. They may do better than that Saturday, guys. Hey, quick question for both of y'all. From Clyde Gustafson, I love it, in Peoria, Illinois. He asks, is the Big Ten the big daddy in college football this year? I guess he heard y'all speaking a minute ago, top to bottom. I don't see how, but what do y'all think?
It's still the Big Ten, and it's still the same. It's still the, same new season, different players. It's still Penn State, Michigan, and Ohio State. One of them is going to go 3-0. The one of them is going to go 2-1. One of them is going to go 1-2, maybe. I don't know, or maybe 0-3. But that you look at that, you got to. Whoever emerges from that threesome is going to be in the playoff. Period.
Yeah, Doug.
Rob, before I sign off, it's been good catching up with you, friends. Franz
Beard.
Before I sign off, some intrigue, especially the people around Lee County, Alabama, and a 100-mile radius of there, will Bo Nix be the guy riding the dark horse that takes down the the publicly acclaimed surging Deion Sanders. I mean, the money, of course, is on Oregon, and I'm sure Deion will be the first to say sometimes you just play a better team. But I'll tell you this, Bo will, gosh, he would never live it down if they can't find a way to win that one. That's for sure.
Yeah, it will. Doug, look, great stuff. Hopefully you can join us tomorrow in HR-2 at 9 a.m. Central. Good. Have you back on. Great stuff as always. Franz, hang on. Wes Moore is in the bullpen over in Little Rock right now, ESPN 103.7 The Buzz. We're going to take a quick commercial break, and then we will be right back with a bunch more talking college football on a Monday morning.
Unbelievably, every 2 minutes in our communities, a child is either bought or sold for sex. I am R.A. Dickey, board member for the Nashville Anti-Human Trafficking Coalition. Join me and millions of others in our fight against human trafficking and for its victims by helping to educate the most vulnerable among us, our middle and high school students. Go to nhtcoalition.org, become a partner, and help keep our families safe, because none of God's children are for sale.
That was quick, man. Rob Browne back here with Franz Beard, bringing in Wes Moore, ESPN 103.7 The Buzz in Little Rock. And I tell you what, I got some questions here for you. One came in a minute ago, Wes, but thanks for taking time to join us. And that was a tough one, but man, you hit on so many good points last Monday about what Arkansas was doing right and what they were doing wrong. And unfortunately, not blowing people off the line of scrimmage and some other things caught up with them Saturday. But what are your takeaways from the loss to BYU, which I hate it because that's an SEC team?
Yeah, it was so many takeaways. I mean, KJ did not play well, did not throw the ball very well, costly interception. Arkansas had been doing a good job of taking care of the ball. They hadn't turned the ball over all season, and they were getting turnovers, and they only got one turnover, no interceptions. Special teams, the punt was bad. A couple bad punts gave BYU great field position. Time after time after time, BYU had to drive, half the field or less. And then the offensive line was bad. That was, that's been the biggest worry through the first two games, through fall camp, replacing two tackles. Cost them, They couldn't get that push on it's 4th and 1. I didn't have a problem going for it there. And I was watching it with a bunch of Razorback fans, and no one had an issue with going for it. The issue was you're in shotgun with a 245, 250-pound quarterback who can run it. Why not go under center and just bowl your way for a yard, That was the disappointing thing to me, that you're in shotgun and then hand it off to your running back. And your guy is KJ Jefferson, and you're letting him just hand the ball away to somebody else. They jumped out, man. It was a perfect scenario for Arkansas. You go down, drive down, you finally get a big play in the running game. You get a 3-and-out, I think it was, special teams punt return. It's 14-0, and you've got the 8th largest crowd in Razorback history just going crazy. And then at some point you got to tip your hat to BYU and say, hey, kudos. You weathered the storm on the road, came back, took the lead, tied it up. Arkansas then once again takes a 10-point lead. I think it was 31-21. And BYU does it again, comes back and wins this thing. So I rambled on, but that's just off the top of my head. That's kind of some of the key things in this game. And there were a lot of failures. BYU played well, but I thought Arkansas played poorly in a lot of different positions, and that's what cost them the game.
I think Arkansas played well enough offensively to win the ball game. But the special teams, I agree with you, gave the game away. I mean, that defense should not be giving up 41 points. There's just no way that they or what was it? I don't know. Was it 41-37 or something like that? Or I can't even remember the score. But and looking at it and looking at the stats after the game, I thought Arkansas gave the game away. There's no question about it. It was kind of like Florida, Utah. Florida gave the game away. And Wes, that's the thing that's troubling me about watching SEC teams in their out of conference games this year is we see so many teams giving games away.
Arkansas outgained BYU. If you look at total yards, if you just look at the stats and look at total yards, you're like, well, Arkansas won this game. But those hidden yards with a 12-yard punt or 17-yard punt, whatever it was, and I think 3 times they didn't have to go very far to score a touchdown because of the interceptions and 2 bad punts.
Question for you from Boxcar Willie in Fordyce, Arkansas. What happened to the Hogs' offensive line in the final 10 minutes? And I think everybody's asking that question. That shocked me because it seemed like they were making just penalties. They were just exhausted and just grasping at straws.
Well, they had guys out of position. You had you had 2 left tackles. They were both out of the game due to injuries. They took Brady Latham, their left guard, moved him to left tackle, and he struggled there, guys. And I guess one of my questions was answered in that game because I had thought out loud on my radio show, what if they move Latham to tackle because he's maybe your best offensive lineman? Move him to left tackle. Does that solidify that spot and then put somebody else at left guard? I think we saw that he's not a left tackle in this game against BYU. If he can't block BYU's defensive ends, I know he can't block LSU and Alabama and Texas A&M's defensive ends. So that's what happened. I mean, injuries. They had some injuries on the offensive line during the game, and it was a mash unit, honestly, at the end. And you saw that with holding call, illegal call. I mean, it was almost every play. There's a flag on the play. I mean, it just got and look at those penalty yards. I didn't mention that in my opening monologue. The penalty yards were just ridiculous for Arkansas to be penalized that many times. And that goes back to what you said, Rob, giving the game away. Penalties, turnovers, that's part of it.
You can't give teams an advantage by getting behind the sticks offensively. People think, well, it's only 5 yards. Yeah, but what a difference does it make when you can get a first down with 3-4 yard plays instead of all of a sudden now it's 1st and 15 and people say, well, it's just 3-5 yard plays. Well, yeah, it is. But guess what? That extra 5 yards makes such a difference in college football. And getting behind the sticks, there aren't that many teams that have that kind of look at that. Spurrier used to never worry about it because, he knew 15 yards. Well, heck, we can just throw a longer pass, Yeah. But not everybody's like that. And you got to be able to stay ahead of the sticks and have that advantage where it's 3rd down and they don't know if you're going to throw or you're going to run. They got to defend the whole field. And when you take that away, that ability to dictate how you're going to set up the defense for the next play, you kill yourself. And Arkansas gave that advantage away.
Yeah, and Wes, look, here's another comment. BYU's defensive ends were really good. We talked about it all last week, and for a long time building up to this game. The age factor. You had a bunch of veteran big guys, and another important factor. These are facts. BYU had 63 new players on their roster that were not on the roster last year when Arkansas whipped them soundly out in Proval. Was that you think that big a deal Saturday night? Again, that one stings because the Razorbacks I thought would come out and play a lot better, but the problems in the Kent State game persisted, and I'm getting all kind of questions and comments on here. Let's just say a lot of people questioning Dan Enos. I think he's a great quarterback coach, but I've never seen KJ look so lost at the end of a game out there on the field like I did Saturday night.
Yeah, I thought BYU defensively did a great job. They dropped their safeties deep. I mean, we were watching the game and just pointing it out. You could see it on the TV screen.
Yeah.
Sometimes they would bring a safety to the into the box, and they would have that safety playing 15, 20 yards deep even. Other times when they had both safeties back, they would be at least 15 yards back. They weren't going to give up the deep ball. But when you go so deep, that opens up that middle behind the linebackers. And I just don't remember that area being attacked very often. And the middle of the field should have been open in front of those safeties. And I don't think Arkansas took advantage of that at all. And yeah, you can point at Dan Enos for that one. When you can see that on TV, certainly they can see that from the press box. And I'm not sure why they didn't attack those safeties underneath.
You know, this is one of the ongoing problems that you see. You look at Tennessee, how few passes Tennessee tried to throw in the middle of the field. And that's so many teams are vulnerable, particularly if you got young safeties like Florida's playing, and the middle of the field is there, and yet nobody throws in the middle of the field anymore. I don't know, is it the wide receivers are afraid to go there or what? But the middle of the field was so open for Alabama. I mean, against South Florida, it was open for Florida. I mean, for Tennessee against Florida, it was open for Arkansas. And did those three teams attack the middle of the field? No, they didn't, and that's strange.
It really is.
I'm lucky enough. I was going to say I get to have Clint Sterner on my show every Monday and Friday, and that's one of the things he said. Good college quarterbacks attack the middle of the field. Bad college quarterbacks are afraid to attack the middle of the field because if you're errant with a throw, it's going to be picked off. There's a lot of traffic there in the middle, and you've got to be, an accurate quarterback. And I think some college quarterbacks, they do. They worry about throwing that ball over the middle of the field. They like to throw it outside the hash marks.
Well, look at this. Here's another one. If Arkansas line was so bad, then why did they rush for their highest rush total in yards for the season? They played okay. Penalties against a veteran offensive line, and Enos play calling poor. Again, I don't think Dan Enos is a bad offensive coordinator. I think he's an excellent quarterback coach. But I don't know. They just, again, I can't remember an Arkansas offensive line making so many mistakes like I did in the most critical time of the game, like they did against BYU. Now you've got to go on the road and play an LSU team. And hell, I don't know how good Mississippi State is. That was an ugly game. But again, I took LSU because I think the visiting team is usually going to have the momentum in an 11 a.m. Central kickoff. But Wes, let's talk about this road trip coming up Saturday down to Baton Rouge.
Doesn't look good. First of all, defensively, LSU's front seven is stout. And we'll hear from Coach Pittman today at noon about the offensive line, the injuries, who's going to be able to play, who won't be able to play. But that's a tough task, man. And look at what Jaden Daniels did. I've said all year, I like him. I think he is the best quarterback in the SEC, and this is somebody who covers KJ Jefferson all the time. But I thought you saw offensively LSU just clicking against Mississippi State. Mm-hmm. I saw the line is up to 18 right now. I think it's gone up for LSU. I have a hard time seeing Arkansas winning this game, much less keeping it close. After what I saw against BYU, it's just a bad matchup, honestly, for Arkansas. I see LSU being able to throw the ball, and their front seven is going to make life tough for Arkansas. If you can't run the ball, then all of a sudden that play action pass, it doesn't mean anything because the linebackers don't have to suck up or the safeties don't have to suck up to try to stop it. That's going to be hard to open things up. It's a tough task, man. College football is a crazy thing. Just when you think you have it all figured out, you see something crazy happen, but that's what's going to happen Saturday night down in Death Valley. Something crazy is going to happen for Arkansas.
Yeah, and you don't ever want to go in hoping I guess, putting your chances of winning on the other team breaking down. You got to be the adversity. You got to bring it to them. Franz, SEC again. We talked about Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State. They're all going to play each other. One of them could be 0-3. So the SEC, a lot of football to be played. We've played 3 games. We got 9 regular season games left. What's the best case scenario for Arkansas based on what you've seen out of them so far? Because this is year 4 for Sam Pittman, and they're recruiting well and all, but fans want more. They want to go to Atlanta to the championship game.
I don't think that's going to happen for Arkansas this year. I think they're a 7-5 or 8-14. And that's no knock on Arkansas. It's just that I don't think they've taken that next step. I may be wrong about that, and I hope that I am. I hope that they prove me wrong on that. But from what I've seen, and Wess could probably validate whether I'm right or wrong, I just haven't seen that they've got what it takes to take that next step. They've got to play Alabama. They got to play A&M. They got to play LSU. They got to play Ole Miss. And even if it's not the greatest year in the SEC, that's still a gauntlet. And very, very few teams can go through that gauntlet without 1 or 2 losses. I think 9-3 is a best case scenario for Arkansas. I think 8-4 is realistic. I think 7-5 is realistic. And I think they're good enough to go 8-4. I would think 7-5. I don't think there's anything wrong with 7-5, even in a down SEC year, because a bad SEC team is still going to win most of its out of conference games, most of them. And I think Sam's a good coach, and he's going to get the and trust me, that offensive line will get figured out. Can they get KJ confident enough and to throw it across the middle? Can Andrew Armstrong be that guy who's that receiver who says, throw me the ball in the middle of the field, I'll make something happen? And I think he's one of the keys to what they do. If he's got we put a lot of pressure, we put a lot of onus for something bad happening on the quarterback. Sometimes the quarterback would love to attack the middle of the field, but he doesn't have a receiver that says, I'll take the punishment. And we don't know that. Maybe West guy, maybe you can enlighten me on that, but I haven't seen. It's one of the two. Somebody either KJ is afraid to throw it across the middle, or they don't have a receiver that's willing to go across the middle.
That's kind of the crazy thing too about it. They have 3 big wide receivers. I mean, Tesla is a big wide receiver. Armstrong, that you mentioned, big wide receiver. Yeah. And then Broden. They worked in Broden a little bit more in this game. He's the biggest wide receiver out of them all. So that is surprising that they don't use those big bodies, that target across the middle. And that's something they're going to have to maybe work on or add it to their dimension of offensive dimension. But that's one of the biggest things to me is those big wide receivers. They have them. Now, you were talking about kind of best case scenario where this season goes. Last week, after narrowly beating Kent State, I thought I changed my. I said this was an 8-9 win team, but last week I said this is a 7-win team. Well, then they lost the game I thought they were going to win, and this may be. I mean, guys, they got to find a way to win 3 SEC games just to become bowl eligible now. 3-5 were those 3 wins. That makes me a little nervous now. I mean, you're going to have to beat Missouri. Missouri looks a little better after beating Kansas State, right? You got to beat Mississippi State. You got to find a way to beat Auburn. That's your 3 SEC wins. But this gauntlet coming up now with LSU, A&M, Alabama, Ole Miss, I mean, you're looking at 2-5 to start the season right now if you can't find a way to win one of these next 4 games.
Well, Clyde in Lone Oak, Arkansas, over there where the catfish ponds are, KJ needs to play his game. He seems frustrated more than I can remember. And I would agree. His body language looked awful in the fourth quarter. You don't see him jammed up, just falling down and tripping over himself and getting crushed in the line like that. Is there a reluctance on the part of Dan Enos and Sam Pittman to turn him loose and just let him play his game? He seems maybe what they're trying to make him be, guys, isn't really what he's comfortable with. And I think I see the same thing with Will Rogers at Mississippi State, Wes. I mean, they're trying to get him to do something that he's, that it's not to his advantage. And if you're Arkansas, the last thing you want to do is have a guy like KJ who's stuck it out and never transferred, could have, loves the Razorbacks, and is the leader in that locker room. You don't want him to be put in a position to where he's not going to succeed. And right now, I agree with Clyde. He looks totally dazed and confused.
Yeah, I got excited. First play of the game, they ran that little quarterback draw with a lead blocker. And it was a good game, and I was like, here we go. Okay, we haven't seen that play all season. This is one of those plays they're holding back, and now they're about to unleash KJ, right? And then the next play was out of that pistol formation and scored a touchdown. We hadn't seen the pistol, I don't think, at all this season. I'm like, okay, here we go. Here goes the offense. And then you look at KJ's running totals for the rest of the game. He didn't have many designed runs, and that was what that's KJ. That is part of this. That's what makes him who he is. He is not a pocket passer that's just going to pick you apart. That's not what he does. He's got to run the football. I mean, that's part of his game, and that wasn't part of the design of the game. I mean, we didn't see that, and that was frustrating because as much as BYU was playing their 2 safeties deep, that means you got to run the ball. And I thought KJ could have been a much more focal point of this game plan, running the football, especially after we saw the success of the very first play of the game. So, yeah, I mean, that very, very it just left you just scratching your head after the game with some of with what just what did I just watch? Why did they do that?
31 carries, 80 yards for him this season. And you're talking about a guy that over the course of his college career has, he's run for about 4.5, 5 yards every year because he's just that, with the momentum he gets, there's no question he should never be stopped for less than 4 or 5 yards. Yeah. I mean, let's face it. I mean, what is he, 6'4" and 245, 250 pounds? This is a guy that should never, ever get stopped for less than 4 or 5 yards because just the momentum he gets, he's going to hurt somebody. I would hate to be 180-pound cornerback and see this freight train coming at me.
Yeah, I would. And Jim in Crawfordsville, Arkansas, what's the latest on Rocket Sanders? That's an interesting question.
Yeah, we'll find out something today from Coach Pittman when he speaks at noon. They were hopeful that he would be able to play against LSU. They feel very confident he'll be ready for A&M. So now it's just, I guess, how that knee responds this week, if he's able to practice or not. So we'll know a little bit more today at noon when Coach Pittman talks to the media. And back to Jefferson, those 30 carries, I bet you half of those 30 carries are sacks or running for his life. I bet only half are designed quarterback runs. We haven't seen many at all this season. And look, first game against Western Carolina, he doesn't need to be carrying the ball. Honestly, against Kent State, he didn't need to be carrying the ball. But in the second half, when it was such a close game, they were forced to have KJ carry the ball. And I think he had 8 carries in the second half, 7 carries designed against Kent State. And I got to go back and watch the game and figure out how many were designed runs for KJ on Saturday and how many were, sacks or scrambling out of the pocket, because I just do not remember many designed runs for KJ.
Yeah, and look, we run out of time, guys. I hate it, but Franz Beard, catching GatorbaitMedia.com, also on the Buddy Martin Show, now 5, sometimes 6 days a week, 9 p.m. Eastern on YouTube. And Wes Moore, Great stuff as always. Wes, let people know how they can keep up with you and what you'll be talking about on the show today. But man, I couldn't get to all the questions. Move keys to wide receiver. They're coming in faster than I can type them in. But great stuff. And again, I know you got a show coming up, and I'm going to be listening to it because I want to hear the follow-up.
Well, we're at the Little Rock Touchdown Club today, where Hunter Yurachek is the guest speaker. And once again, Hunter is coming to the Little Rock Touchdown Club following a loss. I think last year was the first time ever he spoke to the Little Rock Touchdown Club following a win. But he's back following a loss, so we'll get his thoughts on what's happening in the SEC and with Arkansas and, you know, the latest with the program. It'll be fun. So, yeah, download the Buzz app, 1037 The Buzz, or you can just go online and listen online at 1037thebuzz.com. We'll be hitting the air here in about 10 minutes.
All right. Hey, thanks so much, guys. Great show. And, hey, get out today. Hewlett & Dunn Boot and Clothing Company on the historic square in Collierville, Tennessee. The new brands are coming in. Fall, you can feel it right now in the air, Franz. I know down there it's still hot, but Pendleton, Schaefer Outdoors, Danner, Vask, Light Boots, Hire Boots. Hire invented the cowboy boot. And keep in mind, they've got two of the $3,000 teams, one of the $1,500 teams. That is the Clays for Kids, benefiting the Ronald McDonald House, which is across the street from St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. That's coming up this Friday, September 22nd, at the Memphis Sports Shooting Association out in Arlington. Call Chip Greer, 901-482-5680. And one team has opened. They've got one team. They've created an extra one due to popular demand. The Archbishop J. Peter Sarton St. Paul Open coming up October 2nd. Chickasaw Country Club with a dinner the night before. You can still sponsor a flag or sponsor a hole. They've raised over $60,000 so far for the scholarship fund. Again, call Michael Jordan, 901-647-3014. Franz, great stuff. I know you put your pithy thoughts on there. I love your thoughts. And, you know, we just got I know Wes always has to get off a few minutes early because he has a show coming up. He'll be broadcasting live from the Touchdown Club in Little Rock. And I'm going tonight, Franz, to the Touchdown Club in Memphis at 5:30 at the Hilton in East Memphis on Ridgeway. Alyssa Lang, who's on SEC Network, I like her. I think she does a good job, does that show with Takeo Spikes. But, man, you still got to be floating around on cloud 99 after the Swamp victory. And the Swamp Monkey is still on Tennessee's back, Franz.
Well, Tennessee was sitting there and I'm watching them on the sidelines, and these guys, not only they have the noise problem, the one thing that was very, very underrated was the heat and the humidity. You watch how many guys on Tennessee were cramping up in that ball game.
Yes.
And, you know, people say, well, it's hot up in Tennessee too, or it's hot here or there. I'm going to tell you what, there's Louisiana heat and Florida heat, and nobody else can touch that. Yeah. Nobody can touch that. It is a difference. It really is.
It is. It was scorching, man. Look, most often we see the face of Christ in the least among us. We live in the greatest country in the history of the world, folks. Go out and do something great. You never know the lives you can change, including your own. Out of here. Got a great show tomorrow. Until then, take care. We are out of here.